YouTube! Welcome back to another iteration of your favorite content creator. Today we're going to be looking at a list of men. Clan list. Man list. Ban list. A flan list, perhaps. Now, normally these drop days within the conclusion of the WCQ, as we've seen through the pattern of the spreadsheet in terms of ban list timings and stuff like that. Macedo ban list should be imminent, probably this weekend by the time you watch this video. Today we're going to be talking about the post-WCQ fallout and some of the hits that will be occurring in the next few days. Let me give you some context first and foremost, because I know all of you are going to skip ahead and click the end of the video, look at the screen for 30 seconds, and then decide to yourself,
"Huh, this guy's stupid. He thinks that card's getting limited."
And then that's about all you can draw from the conclusion. I will be discussing this in the sense of my personal musings and feelings about it as a casual dad-father gamer, as well as giving some impressions as to what I think is likely to happen in terms of the patterns in Konami's behavior with addressing the metagame from their historical precedent that they set with a lot of the engines. I hope you watch until the end of this video. Let me know what you think down below in the comment section with your decisions and predictions of this ban list. First of all, beginning with some engines that people have been talking about for a while. Let's begin with the Kashtiras. Kashtiras are in a very different position compared to TCG. Very different. The way that the Kashtiras work in the TCG is that they are an engine. They're good cards that you can play in a bunch of decks. Crystron, notably, is one of the decks of the TCG that is taking advantage of the Kashtiras. In the Master Duel format, not so much. Why is that? Because Kashtira is a real deck. It is a pure deck that you can play compared to TCG. If you do want to play a stun deck, in Master Duel, the answer is almost Kashtira. The reason for that is that a Rise Heart is in the game. TCG doesn't have a Rise Heart, so it's okay, in theory, for Fenrir and Unicorn to be at 3. In Master Duel, are they going to change these cards? Unlikely. I don't think they're going to do anything with this. The most relevant one I think that could potentially change is Unicorn. Unicorn is currently at 2. There is maybe a world where they could limit it. I don't really see this card ever being banned. And as we've seen from the WCQ results, this deck is basically not on the radar. It wasn't part of any dominant engines, and so I think it's unlikely to be hit in any shape or form. Does that make them worth hitting? I don't think they're going to do anything to catch it. It's unlikely to change. Crossout and Maxi. I think this is obviously what we would like to see. We would love to see Maxi being banned. It's not really that much of a controversial take anymore. You're still going to be seeing like 20-30% of the community talking about banning Maxi, but with the tactical tri decks, the reprints and all that kind of stuff they've shown us over the course of the last few months in OCG, this is very much a mainstay of the game. And it appears to be, from their logic, some sort of new player assistance. So Maxi is very unlikely to change. Crossout, very similar kind of context here. Recently limited in the TCG, and a card that I feel like is somewhat controversial, particularly when you talk to more casual players. What you'll find is that this card is very divisive among different audiences within Yu-Gi-Oh! Very competitive players kind of sort of unanimously agree cards like Crossout and Talons should just be banned. Call by the Grave likewise. Why is that? Hand traps should resolve. Why should hand traps resolve? It's the only way to interact with your opponent going second. If your opponent draws a card that just turns off a hand trap, now you need to draw more hand traps. Now your deck's getting worse, and now the fun isn't really there. So this card should definitely be banned, but I just don't think they're going to do that. I just assume they're not going to do that, but we would love to see that. Let's talk about Snake Eye. So there are a few ways in which Snake Eye could be addressed. Number one, finally, they completely nuke this deck to orbit. They just put the Snake Eyes in a little capsule and fire them into the sun. That is what most players want to happen. Now, is it likely? One thing that is important context for this DC Cup ban list is there is most likely at least one more ban list to come before Yu-Gi-Oh's most important showing on the grandest stage of them all for the public marketing of the game itself to make the stockholders and shareholders more money, and that's the World Championship. What will Snake Eye's position be in relation to the World Championship this year? I don't think Snake Eye is going to be hit yet. Diabell is definitely not the one, and Flamberge is definitely not the one. Sinful Spoils, I think, is the most logical way to hit the deck mechanically. I think Sinful Spoils pretty much kills Snake Eye and gets rid of the engine and stops the link between the Snake Eyes and the rest of the archetype. But because of the World Championship, and because of the way that the deck is currently functioning in Master Duel, which is this kind of almost annoying to play deck supplemented with the powerful Fiendsmith and Millennium engine, I don't think they're going to hit this deck. As much as we all want this deck to be fired into another universe, I don't think that's going to change. But what I think is very likely to happen is the potential for this engine here. The Millennium engine is the talk of the town and what a lot of people have been discussing for a while now. There are a couple of ways to address this. The Millennium engine, first of all, is a real deck. I know sometimes people forget this, but Millenniums are a real deck. This is a real... I know. Did you know that this is a deck? That's an important thing to recognize. And it's a very new player-friendly deck. The fact that this is a very easily accessible new player-friendly deck that has about 4 or 5 actions and passes makes me think that there's no way they're going to deliberately cripple the engine itself in and of its own archetype. The problem is that Sengenjin is just too good. So how do you play Exodia? I know, it's crazy that we have to cater to this. We have to play Exodia without actually killing the Millennium engine. It's a tough one. It is genuinely a hard one. This engine is so powerful. We saw it in Crystron. It sets up a Photon Lord negate if you need it to. It's engine with Zombie Vampire. It's Fiendsmith combo with the 2 bodies. It does so much. It is so versatile. It's offense, it's defense, it's versatile. What do you do to the Millennium engine? I think Sengenjin limit is possible, and they just accept the fact that they are going to have to deal with Exodia players getting upset about some consistency. I don't think Exodia is dead. I don't think Exodia is unplayable. I think it's always just going to be a fine anti-meta stun deck. I think there is a world where the Sengenjin does get limited. And because of making the Sengenjin limited, Snake Eye is quote-unquote dealt with. I know, it's insane logic, but I think that's what they're going for. By hitting the Sengenjin, they're dealing with Snake Eye. Hopefully, they'll just nuke that deck into the orbit and just ban Sinful Spoils, like we've discussed. But I think that this card staying at 1 is what they're going to do with the Master Duel logic in the ban list. The other discussion is potentially banning Doom Dragon. It's not a bad hit. It's not a bad suggestion, because the only way to actually access a rank 8 in Snake Eye, or rather Millennium, is with the Doom Dragon. Something we never really saw that much in TCG and why this engine never really took off. But it is an argument to be made that because it's so good in that sense that it gives you that Zombie Vampire, which is engine in Snake Eye most of the time, you could see them hitting the Doom Dragon without hitting the Exodia deck. I don't think that's going to happen. I think that the limitation of Sengenjin makes the most logical sense without actually killing Exodia. As for the Zombie Vampire, this is an interesting one. You could just ban this card. It used to be played in some builds of Tearlament. It gets you engine in the Snake Eye deck. It is very versatile in Crystron, for example. Lots of decks can play Zombie Vampire. I don't know. It could be a possibility. I just think that it has to be one of these 3. You either limit Sengen, you ban Zombie, or you ban Doom Dragon. I don't think you do all of them, so I think Sengen is the most likely one. Let's move on to the next engine. So some of the most obvious suggestions are something like this, potentially, right? Banning Closed Moon, completely removing Fiendsmith from being played as an engine, from being played as a Verte style, make Verte 2 bodies, make a guy, move on, do your combo, and just ignore everything that your opponent did by hand trapping you. One interesting thing is that the World Championship deck building process is going to be relevant. Now, why is this something I'm bringing up now? So there is a world where like something like this happens, limiting Closed Moon. I know that sounds absurd, but the way that the World Championship works is that the deck building of the World Championship is that it is unique to each player. If one person plays Closed Moon, the other 2 people can't play Closed Moon. So what they might do is for the World Championship, specifically, limit Closed Moon so that it can't be played in every single deck. That is a possibility. But as I said, there is one more ban list to come before the World Championship. So maybe this is not going to happen just yet. But I do think that there is a possibility where they do something like Closed Moon to 1 in the context of the World Championship. Someone in the chat very, I suppose, I don't know, brazenly, but maybe innocently ask, who gives a shit about the World Championship? Konami gives a shit about the World Championship. It is the biggest marketing, exposure, advertising for their game. They do care about the World Championship a lot. And the last thing that they want is for people like this dude in the chat to spam Resident Sleeper every time a Fiendsmith card hits the board. So I think they do care, and there is a world where this card gets limited for that reason. It was an interesting thing brought up in my Discord, so we'll see if that actually happens. Now, in terms of the right now and here, I don't think that this engine is going to be addressed yet, I think that might be the next ban list, and we could see something like Engraver Limit. They could take a big swing and just go ban Lacrima maybe, but that doesn't really do anything. You've seen from the TCG that banning Lacquer doesn't actually do that much per se. It makes it less versatile, but because of Necroquip Princess and Lacrima, the main deck Lacrima, you still get your rank 6. You can still get Desiree. So I just don't think that this is really the card to hit for now. Let's talk about Crystron, a deck which is surprisingly really good. We talked about this on the podcast, myself and Josh, and Crystron was a deck that had an incredible showing this WCQ season. How did this deck, which was kind of just like this kind of good rogue deck, it was like a mid deck, rogue for sure. You could probably see it at a YCS. It might get 1 or 2 tops out of 32 or 64 top cut spots. But in Master Duel, it was maybe one of the most represented. And some context for you here, this is the top 100 deck lists that have been gathered. Shoutouts to Haas from the Twitter posts and stuff like that. You can see that Crystron is almost at Snake Eye numbers. 1/5 of the entire metagame of the top 100 players in the world who did the WCQ were playing Crystron. Rank 1, number 1 best player in the world, Task, did this achievement with Crystron. So for Crystron to be ruled out is definitely not anything anyone should do. This deck is very good, very powerful, especially in a best of 1 environment. Reason for that is that it has a lot of non-engine. You can stop your opponent when you lose a coin flip with your hand traps. It's very versatile in its disruption. It's quite layered. You have a trap card, you have monster negates, you have hand traps. So it doesn't really auto lose to something like a droplet, or any kind of like mass board breakers or nonsense you might see on the random ladder. So the deck is really good. What do you do with Crystron to hit the deck without outright killing it? You could do something like ban Infinity. No one really likes Omni Negates, but we've seen that TCG and Master Duel have very different philosophies when it comes to extra deck generic Omni Negates. I don't think that banning Infinity is the answer for Crystron. I don't think there is anything that you need to do to Crystron. I think that Crystron is a new deck, very unlikely to be hit, and it's probably going to be, in fact, it will definitely be in deck list for the World Championship, especially with the metagame of how the World Championship deck building works. I don't think that's going to happen. The next card is Miscellaneousaurus. This card was an absolute disgusting, horrible addition to the game. I don't know why they made this, and it definitely has to go. You have reached the halfway point of this video. If you just skip the entire video to get ahead and see what the answer is and get the cheat sheet, not actually engage with the discussion, that's what this is. This is the debate that makes you go back on the replay and wonder, why is Misk here? So yeah, Misk definitely needs to be banned, man. All right, next deck to talk about is Mermail. Mermail's weird. There's a couple of ways to deal with this. First and foremost, you kind of have to look at, like, sort of fundamentally what does Mermail do. Mermail has 2 strengths. Number 1 is going second. It's extremely powerful at breaking boards. It's very good. Lots of cards, in fact, all of the cards are cost related. So negates don't really tend to fully do what they need to do against Mermail. So sending things from deck for cost with things like Poseidra, pitching things out of your hand for cost with things like Pike, are really good into boards. So the deck is very strong going second. It's great fun to play, and probably when it's the most healthiest to engage with. Now going first is a different beast. Mermail utilizes one of the most frustrating and irritating mechanics in the entire game of Yu-Gi-Oh! Hand ripping. Hand knowledge, hand ripping, interacting with your opponent's card advantage is really frustrating. When you queue into a game on ranked and you are queued against someone where you're just not doing anything and they are taking cards away from you, that is one of the easiest ways to make your opponent quit the game. Not just like that duel, but just Alt F4 and uninstall. So I think that the way that this deck is going to be addressed will probably be hand related. Some of the most obvious changes would be something like limiting Dragoons for its consistency, banning the barrier statue, banning Mulan Glacia, banning Minstrel. These are all different talking points that people can bring about when discussing Mermail. Now, the barrier statue, what we've seen from the DC Cup standings is this card is just not played. You don't need the statues. The statues aren't relevant. It is part of the combo. You can special summon from your deck if you want to, but that's not really what the true toxic nature of Mermail is. This card should be banned in general, probably, but I don't think it's because of Mermail. So I don't think this one is likely to change. Mulan Glacia is an interesting one. Mulan Glacia doesn't really have any benefit going second. It's a big body that helps you OTK. You can transform it into a rank 7 with Shadow Squad on the field. I think there's a world where they ban these 2 cards. These are the worst elements of Mermail. Getting rid of your opponent's cards essentially for free with no backlash just because you have the right number of waters in your grave, unless your opponent has like a timely Ghost Ogre. It's pretty much impossible to interact with the Mulan Glacia. You want to hand trap Mermail early because once you let them send for cost too much, they kind of just snowball out of control, and the Ash Blossoms just kind of start to not really do anything. Minstrel, I think, is also a very likely one as well, so it's kind of either one of these or maybe both of these is what could happen. Another hit is potentially something like Sekka's Light. We saw that Mermail was optimized with something like Sekka's Light. We saw historically that one of the ways they hit at Emancipator, yes, the deck that was ending on Savage, Baron, Apollousa, Masquerena with the 3 block dragons in the beginning of Master Duel, what they did was they semi-limited Analyzer and they limited Sekka's Light. You know how Konami's Master Duel team likes to balance the game. So there's a world where Sekka's Light maybe gets limited again. I don't really see that happening, but just in terms of Konami addressing the format, that's kind of like how they seem to hit decks. Let's hit the 7th best card in the deck and call it a day, which is why I don't think Totally Awesome is ever going to come back. As long as Bahamut Shark is in the game, as long as Mermail is a deck, as much as it could be argued that this might come back to the game in order to help Sprite, a big fan favorite deck, popularized maybe by a certain Jaja. As much as the nation of Germany would have its influence on this ban list, I don't think that's really going to bring Toad back. I think that Toad deserves to be where he is right now, and that is forever in the dumpster pile of the generic Omnis of the extra deck. It's not that generic, but you know. Let's talk about Blue Eyes. Blue Eyes recently got a sizable hit on the Forbidden Limited list, at least in the context of Master Duel, which is getting 2 engine cards, starters, extenders as well in some way, semi-limited. Losing 2 cards from your lineup in Blue Eyes is kind of rough. You've seen people coping really hard on Blue Eyes by playing things like Perry Rice Map. Bingo Machine is in some deck lists. So there's a world where Blue Eyes could maybe see something like a Spirit Dragon Limited. I feel like I forgot to really include the Primite cards here. But I'll give you a spoiler right now. Primite cards are not getting hit. They're way too new, I believe, from the selection pack store. I think they're still in the cash shop. For now, I don't see them being hit. Spirit Dragon to 1. You could see that happening. It takes away the annoying, like, aspects of Blue Eyes, which is, you know, it's got lots of good hand traps. It's a decent sticky board. But then it does, like, a crazy Omni Negate thing. Hasn't really been that good or standard, and I think a lot of people have been cutting that. And I don't think Spirit is the answer for this deck. And I really don't see them doing more consistency hits. I think Blue Eyes is in a good spot. It's a fine deck. It's a healthy deck. It's pretty okay to interact with. It's got a Grave Negate. It's got an Omni Negate, some hand traps, and Drill Beam is obviously a powerful card, but it's not like anything completely unreasonable in the context of modern Yu-Gi-Oh! Like, those are relatively decent cards to try and play through and beat. So I don't think Blue Eyes is a deck that needs to be reined in or addressed too hard. And I think as well, I keep bringing it up, but the World Championship is the grandest stage of them all. I think they would love to have Blue Eyes be center stage in that tournament, no doubt. So I think Blue Eyes is not going to experience any hits. Branded! Well, I mean, there's an anime coming, and we get to watch Albaz turn into a dragon before Ecclesia's very eyes. Are they gonna put this card all the way up to 3 at this stage? Branded is such a specific niche deck in a way that it's very playable for the average player, but when it's played by a good player, Branded is terrifying. Even now, with the 2 Branded fusion, when you queue up against a good Brandy, it is terrifying how good that deck is. It literally gets an extra main phase compared to the average Yu-Gi-Oh deck. It's a really weird archetype because hitting the deck is sort of a rich get richer situation. The average Branded player is just at the bottom dredges of nothing right now, right? Like, playing Branded even to a competent level is difficult. Playing Branded at the highest level, the more tools you give this deck, the more dominant it becomes, but only by, like, literally a handful of players on the world. So buffing this deck too much is just too much of a buff for, like, literally, like, 3 people. As much as Branded is a controversial deck within the community, I don't blame me for that, okay? Listen, I don't have an issue with it. It's our Master Duel meme review that I have a problem with. I don't think this card is going to go to 3. I think it's in a fine place. I think it's where it has to be. I see a world where this card goes to 3. I see a world where this happens. If and only if, because they're getting a literal anime with very highly paid and recognized notorious voice actors. For that reason alone, this card could go to 3. Memento. Memento's sort of in the same boat as, like, Branded. It's a very high ceiling, skill floor deck. It's very difficult to play. And I think it's a strong deck, it's a powerful archetype, but it's nowhere near the competitive level that we saw Snake Eye at, and for some reason also Crystron. Might be something to do with its sort of, you know, playability in the average hands, right? Like, if you put enough people on a certain deck, it becomes crazy, but if you take it away, then the representation isn't there. So while Memento is absolutely ludicrous, I think that there could be a world where, like, they'd hit some Memento cards, but the most likely ones is something I forgot to put here. It's the Paradise Smasher. So it's a new combo that's been been played semi-recently. I never really saw it in the TCG. I could be wrong. But Paradise Smashers, if you overlay it with, like, what is it, like double horse and some other level 5, it has like an 80-90% win rate of just like VFDing your opponent. So Paradise Smashers could be a card they ban. In terms of Master Duel logic, I don't think they're going to see... they're going to ban that. I don't think that's going to happen. It's a very, very weird, obscure card to ban, of all things. So I don't see that happening. But there is a world where maybe you ban that card. And finally, Snow and Magic Dragon back to 3. Do you know why? Because this promotes the game in a very fun and healthy way. Type what if you agree.